"You saved my life. Now take my daughter as your wife," said the Apache woman I rescued. He lived a quiet life near the edge of the land, where the open plains met the rough desert hills. Most people knew him as a hardworking man who minded his own business. He rose early, worked until the sun dipped low, and spoke only when needed. He respected the land and the people who had lived on it long before him. He never crossed boundaries without reason, and he never went looking for trouble. Life, for him, was simple and honest. That afternoon began like any other. The sun was strong, the air dry, and the land stretched endlessly in shades of brown and gold. He was riding slowly, checking a distant fence line, when something felt wrong. The desert was usually silent except for the wind, but that day the silence felt heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a faint sound, almost carried away by the wind, a weak cry. He stopped immediately. His horse shifted uneasily, sensing the tension. He listened again, his heart beating faster. There it was, a soft, broken call for help coming from the direction of a dry ravine not far away. Most people would have turned back. That area was dangerous. People went missing there. And the Apache lands nearby were not a place outsiders entered without cause. But something inside him would not let him ignore that sound. He tied his horse and moved carefully on foot, scanning the ground, alert to every movement. As he reached the edge of the ravine, he saw her. She lay partially in the shade of a rock, her body weak and unmoving. Her clothes were torn by the harsh land, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Dust clung to her skin, and dried marks showed where she had been hurt. She was alive, but barely. He froze for a moment. She was Apache. He could tell by her features, her clothing, and the symbols she wore. He knew helping her could bring serious consequences. Some would question his intentions. Others might see his presence as an intrusion. But as he looked at her, all those thoughts faded. She was not a symbol, not a boundary, not a risk. She was a human being fighting to stay alive. He knelt beside her slowly so he wouldn't frighten her. When he spoke, his voice was calm and low. He told her she was safe. He offered her water, letting her sip only a little at first. Her eyes opened briefly, filled with pain and confusion, but also something else, relief. She tried to speak, but her voice failed her. He checked her injuries as best as he could. She had fallen, maybe been attacked by the land itself, sharp rocks, heat, exhaustion. Whatever had happened, she had been alone for too long. He cleaned her wounds carefully, using what he carried with him. Every movement was gentle, respectful. Time mattered. He knew she wouldn't survive if she stayed there much longer. With great effort, he helped her up, supporting her weight, speaking softly to keep her conscious. Step by step, they moved back toward his horse. The journey felt longer than it was. The sun burned overhead and his arms ached, but he did not stop. Once they reached the horse, he secured her carefully and rode slowly, choosing the safest path. He took her not to his home, but to a place where he knew help could reach her without causing harm, near enough to Apache territory that her people could find her, but safe enough for her to recover. When he finally stopped, he built shade, gave her more water, and stayed nearby watching over her. Hours passed. Her breathing grew steadier. Her color returned slowly. When her eyes opened again, they stayed open longer this time. She looked at him clearly now. There was no fear in her gaze, only awareness. She studied his face as if trying to understand why he was there, why he had helped her, why he had not left her to the desert. He told her again that she was safe, that her people would come, that she would live. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, not loud or dramatic, just quiet drops of emotion. She closed her eyes again, her body finally allowing itself to rest. Before night fully settled, distant movement appeared on the horizon, shapes against the fading light. Riders. He stepped back, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. The Apache men approached carefully, alert and protective. When they saw the woman and realized she was alive, relief spread quickly through their group. Their eyes turned to him. Questions filled the air, unspoken but heavy. He explained simply. He heard her. He helped her, nothing more. They examined her wounds, spoke softly to her as she woke again, and nodded to one another. One of the elders stepped forward, his expression serious but not hostile. He looked at the man closely, as if measuring his heart rather than his words. Finally, the elder gave a small nod. They took the woman, lifting her carefully, preparing to return to their land. Before they left, she reached out weakly and touched the man's sleeve. Her grip was light but full of meaning. Their eyes met once more. No words were spoken. As the riders disappeared into the darkening land, the man stood alone, unsure of what he had just set into motion. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired, thoughtful, changed in a way he could not explain. That night, as the stars filled the sky, he sat quietly, replaying the moment he chose to follow that sound instead of turning away. He had no idea that this single choice, this simple act of kindness, had tied his life to another forever. Far away, the Apache woman lay surrounded by her people, alive because a stranger listened when the land cried out. And though neither of them knew it yet, this rescue was only the beginning. Days passed after the rescue, but the memory of that afternoon stayed heavy in the man's mind. He returned to his routine, waking early, working the land, fixing fences, feeding animals, yet everything felt slightly different. The desert looked the same, the wind sounded the same, but inside him something had shifted. He often found himself looking toward the distant hills, wondering if the Apache woman had survived the night, then the next, and the next. He told no one about what had happened. He was not a man who spoke of his actions, especially when they involved risk. Still, the silence did not last long. Across the land within the Apache community, the woman slowly regained her strength. The elders gathered around her mat as she healed, listening carefully as she spoke. Her voice was weak at first, but her words were clear. She told them about the desert, the fall, the pain, and the moment she believed her life was ending. Then she spoke of the stranger who appeared when she thought no one would come. She described his calm voice, his careful hands, and how he treated her not as an enemy or a burden, but as a person whose life mattered. She told them he did not ask her name, did not demand thanks, and did not fear her identity. He simply helped. Among her people, this was not a small thing. To save a life was more than an act of kindness. It was a sacred crossing. It created a bond that could not be ignored. The elders listened in silence. Some exchanged glances. Others closed their eyes, thinking deeply. When she finished, the oldest among them spoke softly. He said the land does not choose just anyone to carry such moments. When a life is spared, balance must be honored. Meanwhile, the man noticed subtle changes near his land. Tracks he did not recognize appeared and vanished. Once, from a distance, he saw riders watching him briefly before disappearing into the hills. They did not approach. They did not threaten. They only observed. He understood what that meant. The Apache knew who he was. One evening, as the sun lowered and painted the sky in deep orange and purple, he saw them approach openly for the first time. 3 figures rode toward him at a steady pace. His body stiffened, but his face remained calm. He stepped forward into the open, hands visible, his posture respectful. They stopped a short distance away. One was older, his presence strong and steady. Another was younger, watchful. The third was the woman he had rescued. She looked different now, stronger. Her posture was upright, her eyes clear. The wounds were still there, but life had returned to her face. When she looked at him, recognition passed between them instantly. He lowered his head slightly in respect. The elder spoke first. His voice was firm but not unkind. He thanked the man for what he had done. The words were simple, but the meaning behind them was heavy. Gratitude from the Apache was not given lightly. The man replied honestly. He said anyone would have done the same. The elder studied him closely and then shook his head. He said many people hear cries. Few choose to answer. They asked him to walk with them for a short distance, not as a demand but as an invitation. He agreed. As they walked, the woman spoke quietly. She told him she would have died without him. She said her children would have lost their mother. Her people would have lost one of their own. She said his choice had changed more than just one moment. He felt uncomfortable hearing this. He did not see himself as someone who deserved praise. Still, he listened. When they stopped, the elder explained that among their people, a life saved creates a debt that cannot be repaid with objects or words. It is a spiritual weight, a responsibility. The man felt uneasy. He said he did not want anything in return. He only wanted to know she was safe. The woman looked at him steadily. She said safety was only part of it. Honor had to be restored. Balance had to be returned to the world. They did not say more that evening. They left him with those words hanging in the air like unanswered questions. In the days that followed, he was invited, carefully, respectfully, to the edge of their community. He did not go deep inside. He did not push boundaries. He waited until he was guided. When he did enter, he felt many eyes on him, some curious, some cautious, some guarded. He remained quiet, polite, and observant. He accepted water when offered. He listened more than he spoke. The Apache woman moved among her people with dignity. Though she was still healing, her presence carried strength. People listened when she spoke. Children watched her closely. It was clear she was respected. She spoke openly about the rescue, repeating again and again that the man had acted with honor. Slowly, the tension softened. The elders took note of how he behaved, how he never acted superior, how he followed custom, how he waited to be addressed. One afternoon, as the heat pressed down and shadows shortened, the woman sat with him beneath a tree. She thanked him again, this time not as a survivor but as a mother. She spoke of her daughter. She said her daughter was quiet but strong, observant, and wise beyond her years. She said the girl had watched over her during recovery, barely sleeping, refusing to leave her side. A mother's life meant everything to a daughter. The man listened, unsure where this conversation was leading. The woman said her daughter asked many questions about the stranger who saved her. She wanted to know what kind of man would risk crossing boundaries for someone he did not know. She wanted to know what kind of heart he had. The man felt a strange weight settle in his chest. That evening, the elders gathered again. The air felt different, more serious, more focused. He sensed that something important was coming, though no one spoke directly. As the fire burned low and stars began to appear, the Apache woman stood. Her voice carried clearly. She spoke of debt, of balance, of life preserved when death had been near. She spoke of tradition, of bonds formed through actions, not blood. Then she turned to the man. Her eyes were steady, certain. She said words that would change his life forever. But before those words could fully land, the fire crackled, the night deepened, and the moment stretched, heavy with meaning, waiting to unfold. The fire burned quietly as the night settled around the gathering. The air felt still, as if even the wind had paused to listen. The man sat among the Apache people, careful with his posture, his eyes lowered in respect. He could sense that something important was about to happen, though he did not yet understand what it would be. The Apache woman stood near the fire. The flames lit her face, showing strength shaped by hardship and survival. Her voice was calm, but every word carried weight. She spoke about the land, about life and death, and about how the world stays in balance only when people honor what they are given. She spoke about the day she was rescued. She described the heat, the pain, and the moment she believed her time was ending. She said she remembered the sound of footsteps, the shadow that fell across her face, and the voice that told her she was not alone. She told everyone that this man did not hesitate. He did not turn away. He did not ask who she was or what trouble might come from helping her. He simply chose life. The people listened closely. Some nodded. Others stared into the fire, thinking deeply. The elders remained silent, allowing her to speak without interruption. Then she said something that made the man lift his head. She said that when a life is saved, the debt is not small. It is not something that fades with time. It becomes part of the story of everyone involved. She said that balance must be restored not just with words but with action. She turned fully toward him then. Her eyes met his, steady and clear. There was no anger in them, no demand, only certainty. She said that he had saved her life, and in doing so, he had protected her family and her future. She said she could not allow such a gift to go unanswered. Then, in a voice that carried across the firelight, she made her offer. She asked him to take her daughter as his wife. The world seemed to stop. The man felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He did not speak. He could not. His thoughts rushed all at once, colliding and tangling. He had expected thanks, maybe respect, but not this. Not something so large, so life-changing. A quiet murmur passed through the group, but no one reacted with shock or anger. The elders watched closely, not judging, only observing. This was not a sudden idea to them. It was something they had already considered. The man stood slowly. His movements were careful, his face serious. He did not want to offend anyone. He spoke honestly, saying he was grateful for the trust being shown to him, but he was unsure. He said he never helped her expecting anything in return. He said marriage was not a reward to be given or taken lightly. The Apache woman listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded once. She said she understood. She said this was not a reward but an offering of trust. She explained that her daughter's future mattered deeply to her, and she would never place it in careless hands. She gestured, and her daughter stepped forward. The young woman had been standing quietly among the others, her presence almost unnoticed until now. She moved with calm confidence, her eyes observant, her expression composed. She did not smile. She did not look away. She met the man's gaze without fear. For the first time he truly saw her. She was not fragile. She was not shy. There was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. He realized then that this decision was not only her mother's. The daughter had been watching him from the beginning. The Apache woman spoke again. She said her daughter had listened to the story of the rescue many times. She said the girl had asked questions, not about what the man owned or where he came from, but about how he acted, about his patience, his respect, his silence when silence was needed. She said her daughter believed a man who could save a stranger without expectation could be trusted with a family. The daughter spoke then, her voice steady but soft. She said she did not see him as an outsider who crossed a boundary. She saw him as someone who listened to the land and answered when it cried. She said she would not accept a life decided without her voice, and she was choosing to stand there now. The man felt his chest tighten. He realized this was not pressure. It was honesty. Still, doubt lived inside him. He asked how he could belong to a world he did not grow up in. He asked how he could honor traditions he was still learning. He did not want to cause harm by stepping into a place he did not understand. One of the elders finally spoke. His voice was deep and calm. He said belonging is not given by birth alone. It is earned through respect, patience, and actions over time. He said the man had already shown the first signs. The fire crackled softly as silence returned. The man asked for time. Not days, not months, just time to think clearly and honestly. The elders agreed. Rushed decisions, they said, lead to broken paths. That night the man did not sleep. He sat alone under the open sky, staring at the stars. He thought about his life before the rescue, simple, quiet, predictable. He thought about how one moment had opened a door he never knew existed. He thought about responsibility, about partnership, about the meaning of joining two lives, not just two people, but two worlds. He realized something important then. Whether he accepted or refused, his life would never return to what it was. The choice he had made in the ravine had already changed everything. As dawn approached, he felt no fear, only clarity slowly forming. When the sun rose, painting the land in soft light, the Apache woman stood nearby, watching the horizon. She did not rush him. She did not question him. She trusted that he would answer when ready. And as the new day began, the man knew that whatever he decided next would shape not just his future, but the balance of lives now connected by one act of compassion. The days that followed were quiet, but the silence was heavy with thought. The man did not rush his decision. He continued his daily work, yet his mind was never fully on the tasks in front of him. Each morning, as the sun rose over the land, he felt the weight of choice resting on his shoulders. This was not just about him anymore. It was about respect, trust, and a future that reached far beyond one person. He spent time alone, walking the open land, letting the wind clear his thoughts. He thought about the Apache woman, her strength, and the certainty in her voice. He thought about her daughter, the calm in her eyes, the confidence in her words. There was no fear there, no hesitation. That alone stayed with him. At the same time, doubt returned again and again. He knew he came from a different world. His ways, his habits, even his silence had been shaped by a life apart. He wondered if good intentions were enough. He wondered if respect could truly bridge such a wide distance. The Apache community did not push him. No one came to ask for an answer. No one tried to guide his choice. Instead, they watched. They waited. In that patience, he felt both freedom and responsibility. The daughter began to appear more often during those days, not to speak of marriage, not to ask questions, but simply to exist in the same space. Sometimes she helped elders. Sometimes she worked quietly near the children. Other times she sat under a tree, weaving or observing the land. She never followed him, yet their paths crossed naturally. When they did speak, their conversations were simple. They talked about the land, the weather, the changes of seasons. She asked about his work and he asked about her people's traditions. There was no pressure in their words, only learning. He noticed how carefully she listened. When he spoke, she did not interrupt. When she shared, her words were thoughtful, measured. She did not try to impress him or hide who she was. That honesty made him feel at ease. Slowly, trust began to grow, not suddenly, not loudly, but like roots forming beneath the soil. One afternoon, they walked together along the edge of the land. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle. She spoke about her childhood, about learning to listen to the land and understand its signs. She spoke about responsibility, how each choice carries weight, not only for oneself but for those connected to you. He shared pieces of his own life, stories he rarely told anyone. He spoke about loneliness, about choosing a quiet path because it felt safe. He admitted he never imagined his life joining with another so deeply. She listened without judgment. At one point, he asked her directly if she truly agreed with her mother's offer. He told her he needed to know the truth, not tradition. She stopped walking and faced him. Her answer was clear. She said her mother's words matched what she already felt. She said she would not accept a future built on pressure or fear. She was standing there because she chose to. That honesty settled something inside him. Still, he sought guidance not from words but from actions. He helped where he could, always waiting to be asked. He learned small customs, followed rules carefully, and accepted correction without pride. The elders watched closely. Some tested him in quiet ways, asking him to wait, to listen, to observe patience rather than skill. He did not fail those tests because he did not rush them. One evening, he sat with the eldest elder, sharing a simple meal. The elder spoke about belonging. He said belonging is not about losing who you are, but about protecting what matters to others as much as you protect yourself. He said marriage, in their way, is not ownership, it is partnership. Those words stayed with the man long after the fire faded. That night he returned to his land for the first time since the offer. The familiar quiet welcomed him. He stood under the stars, the same stars he had known all his life. Yet he felt different beneath them now. His life no longer felt small or isolated. It felt connected. He realized something important. He had always believed peace came from avoiding change, but now he understood that peace could also come from accepting responsibility with an open heart. At dawn, he returned. The Apache woman was waiting. She did not ask for his decision. She simply greeted him. The daughter stood nearby, calm as ever. The man took a breath. He spoke clearly and honestly. He said he could not promise perfection. He could not promise to understand everything immediately, but he could promise respect, patience, and commitment. He could promise to protect, to listen, and to walk carefully between worlds without dishonor. The Apache woman listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she nodded slowly. She said that true promises are not loud. They are proven over time. The daughter met his gaze, and for the first time a small smile appeared, not excitement, not relief, but trust. The elders gathered. There was no celebration yet, no announcement, only acknowledgement. The path forward had been chosen, but it would be walked step by step. As the sun climbed higher, the man felt no fear, only calm. He knew challenges would come, differences would test them, but the foundation had been built on choice, respect, and honesty. And in that quiet moment, standing between the past he knew and the future forming ahead, he understood that saving one life had led him to discover a deeper purpose, one that required courage not in action, but in commitment. The final steps toward a new life did not come with loud celebration or sudden change. Instead, everything moved slowly, with care and purpose. The man understood now that this was the Apache way. Important things were not rushed. They were allowed to grow strong before being shown to the world. In the days that followed his promise, he remained close to the community. He continued helping where needed, always respectful, never assuming his place. The elders watched quietly, seeing not just what he did, but how he did it. They noticed his patience, his willingness to learn, and the way he listened more than he spoke. The daughter walked beside him more often now. Their connection did not come from grand words or dramatic moments, but from shared silence and understanding. They worked together, spoke honestly, and gave each other space when needed. Trust grew naturally between them, like something meant to happen in its own time. One evening, as the sky turned soft with fading light, the Apache woman sat with the man. Her voice was calm, but there was emotion beneath it. She said that when she had been lying alone in the desert, she believed her story had ended. She said she never imagined that moment would become the beginning of something greater, not just for her, but for her family. She told him that by saving her life, he had returned balance not only to her people, but to himself as well. She said she could see it in the way he carried himself now. He was no longer a man standing apart from the world. He was connected. The man thanked her quietly. He said he did not regret his choice, even though the path ahead would not always be easy. She smiled and told him that no meaningful path ever was. When the time came, the elders gathered once more. This gathering felt different from the others. There was calm in the air, certainty instead of tension. The decision had already been made in spirit. This was simply its acknowledgement. The daughter stood beside the man. She did not look nervous. She looked steady. When asked if she chose this path freely, she answered clearly. When the man was asked the same, he spoke without hesitation. He said he chose partnership, respect, and responsibility. He chose to walk forward not alone but together. There was no exchange of promises filled with emotion or display. Instead, there was quiet understanding. The elders accepted their words. The community accepted their union. Life did not suddenly change after that day. The land still rose with the sun and rested with the stars. Work still needed to be done. Challenges still appeared, but something deeper had settled into place. The man began to divide his time between his land and the Apache community. Slowly, he brought parts of his life closer, not forcing change, but allowing it. He learned more each day, about traditions, about responsibility, about the importance of listening to those who came before. The daughter supported him, not by guiding his every step, but by walking beside him. When he made mistakes, she corrected him gently. When he struggled, she reminded him why he had chosen this path. Over time, the people began to see him not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged, not because he had saved a life, but because he continued to honor that act through his choices. The Apache woman watched all of this with quiet peace. She saw her daughter strong and respected. She saw the man growing into his role, carrying responsibility with humility. She knew then that the debt she once felt had transformed into something far greater than repayment. Years later, the story of the rescue was still told, but not as a tale of heroism. It was told as a lesson about listening, about choosing compassion when it would have been easier to turn away, about how one act of kindness can change many lives. The man never claimed credit. He never spoke of destiny. He simply lived the life he had chosen, honoring both the past and the future. And whenever he walked the land where the ravine once lay silent, he remembered the sound that changed everything, a faint cry carried by the wind, answered not by courage alone, but by humanity. In that answer, two worlds had found a way to walk forward together,